It was one of those hot Missouri Saturdays where the heat made your shirt stick to your back before noon. My name's Greg. I'm 38, work in IT for a small medical software company, and I live in a modest suburb just outside Kansas City. That day, we were at the company's annual summer barbecue. Big tents, catered food, cornhole tournaments, the whole corporate family bonding package. My wife, Natalie, had insisted we go. She loved these things. Said it helped her connect with my coworkers. I never bought that. She wasn't exactly the social type at home. But whatever. I figured it was easier to go than argue about it. I was holding a paper plate of ribs and potato salad, wandering through the lawn looking for her. I spotted her near the drink station, laughing. Loudly. Too loudly. That laugh that starts in the throat and finishes with a hair toss. The one she saves for flirting. She was standing with some guy from HR. I think his name was Jared. And she was angled toward him like he was the only one who mattered. I watched from a few feet away. Jared was tall, athletic, with that effortless charm some guys carry like cologne. Natalie was twirling her straw in her drink and laughing at something he said, her hand briefly touching his arm. I stepped closer, smiled, and said, "Hey, Nat. They've got homemade peach cobbler at the dessert table." She didn't even look at me, just gave a quick nod and said, "Okay, babe," then turned right back to Jared. He didn't acknowledge me either. I tried again. "Jared, right? We met at the winter party." He glanced at me and gave a polite, "Oh yeah," before going right back to talking to her. It was like I'd stepped into a conversation I wasn't invited to. I stood there awkwardly, trying to laugh along, but Natalie cut me off mid-sentence with a, "Greg, can you grab me another drink? Vodka soda." "No please." No glance. Just a dismissal, like I was the intern being sent for coffee. I stood there a second too long. Jared smirked, clearly amused, and Natalie just raised her eyebrows like, well, that was the moment. The moment I saw it for what it really was. This wasn't friendly banter. This wasn't just being social. This was something else. Something deeper. Something ugly. I walked away, not to get her drink, but because I didn't want to stand there and let myself be humiliated any longer. About 15 minutes later, I found her again near the buffet line. She was alone this time, scrolling through her phone. I walked up and said, as calmly as I could, "Do you even realize how you just treated me back there?" She didn't even blink. Just shrugged. "Greg, you're being sensitive." It was a conversation. I shook my head. "No, that wasn't just a conversation. You ignored me. You dismissed me. You were all over that guy." She finally looked up. "If you're so uncomfortable, Greg," she said, her tone flat and annoyed. "The door's right there." That sentence hit harder than any punch. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I stared at her for a second, waiting for a laugh, a smirk, something to tell me she didn't mean it. But there was nothing. Just that same indifferent stare. So I nodded once. "Okay," I said quietly. And I turned around and walked away. I didn't look back. Not when I reached the parking lot. Not when I passed the rows of minivans and pickup trucks lined up on the yellowed grass. Not even when I heard my name called, once, sharp and disbelieving, from across the yard. I got in the car, shut the door, and just sat there for a minute with the engine off. The noise of the barbecue was still going behind me. All laughter and music and beer cans cracking open. But in the car, it was quiet. That kind of quiet that doesn't just surround you. It wraps around your ribs and squeezes until you finally breathe different. And I did. I took a deep breath and turned the key. As I drove away, I expected to feel guilt, or fear, or that itch to circle back and smooth things over, like I always did. But it never came. Instead, I felt clear, like I'd stepped out of a fog and finally saw the road in front of me for the first time in years. The farther I got from that party, the easier it was to breathe. About 5 minutes into the drive, my phone buzzed in the center console. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again, and again. I finally glanced down and saw her name filling the screen. Natalie. Then 2 missed calls. Then new message. Then 3 more. I pulled over near an empty strip mall, put the car in park, and just watched the notifications roll in. "Natalie, are you serious right now? Where the hell are you going? Greg, come back. Stop being childish. You're overreacting. What am I supposed to tell people?" It was like watching someone slide down a hill in real time, from cocky to confused to panicked, all in the space of 10 messages. I didn't respond. I sat there for a while in the heat, listening to the ticking of the engine and the quiet hum of the AC. A thought came to me, not with drama, not with pain, just plain and steady. I don't think I want to be married to someone who treats me like a placeholder. That night, I didn't go back to the barbecue. I didn't even go out. I went straight home, ordered some takeout, and sat on the couch with the TV off, chewing in silence while my phone buzzed like a wasp against the coffee table. By 9:30, the calls had slowed. The last message I got said, "Fine. If you want to make a scene and disappear, Don't bother coming back tonight. It's embarrassing. I locked my phone and set it face down. And for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't worried about what would happen next. I was just quiet. And I liked it. Natalie came home the next morning like a storm pretending to be sunshine. I was in the kitchen, halfway through my first cup of coffee, still in the same clothes I'd worn yesterday. She slammed the front door a little harder than necessary, tossed her purse onto the entry table, and walked in like nothing had happened. "Wow," she said, voice all faux lightness. "So this is how we handle problems now? You just bail?" I didn't say anything. I took a slow sip and watched her from across the counter. She scoffed. "Unbelievable." I finally spoke. "You told me the door was right there. So I used it." "Oh my God, Greg." She threw her hands up. "That was sarcasm. You're seriously that sensitive?" I stayed calm. I'd rehearsed this in my head all night. "No," I said. "I'm not sensitive. I'm tired." She blinked. "Tired?" "Yeah," I said. "Tired of pretending that your disrespect is normal. Tired of being treated like a ghost in my own life." She leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. "Are you seriously going to make a big deal out of me talking to a coworker? That's not what happened, and you know it." My voice was flat. "You flirted with that guy like I wasn't even standing there. You ignored me, cut me off, sent me away like I was your assistant." I was being polite. It's called networking. Don't insult my intelligence. Her face twisted. "Okay, so what, Greg? I was chatting with someone who made me laugh. Forgive me for not being glued to your side at a company picnic." I set the mug down. "You made me feel invisible." She laughed, short and bitter. "God, you're insecure." That one stung, but I didn't show it. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and said what I'd been thinking since yesterday. "Should I trust you?" The room went quiet. She stopped pretending to be annoyed. Stopped deflecting. For a split second, her mouth opened like she was going to say something, but nothing came out. And that silence? That said more than any answer she could have given. I nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." She grabbed her purse off the counter and walked past me, but not before snapping. "You're not exactly a joy to be around lately, Greg." "I wonder why," I muttered. She stopped in the doorway, turned around, and pointed at me. "This is exactly what I meant at the barbecue. You're always playing the victim, always overanalyzing. Maybe if you grew a spine, we wouldn't be here." That was it. I stood up and took a step toward her. "You want to know what's really pathetic?" I said, voice steady. "You think being cold makes you powerful. You think mocking your husband in public makes you funny. But all it does is show everyone how little you respect me. And if that's what you really think of me." I gestured toward the same door she'd pointed at yesterday. "Then maybe I should keep walking." She didn't say anything, just stared at me, eyes hard, lips tight. Then she turned and walked upstairs without another word. The door didn't slam this time, but everything else in the house felt like it already had. It was quiet for the next 2 days. Not peaceful quiet, more like that thick, stale silence that clings to every room. We moved around each other like strangers in a hotel suite. The air between us felt loaded, like something waiting to explode. Then, late Wednesday night, she knocked on the bedroom door. I was sitting on the edge of the bed in gym shorts and an old t-shirt, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes soft but guarded. "I've been thinking," she said. I looked up but didn't say anything. She stepped inside. "I'm sorry. About the barbecue. About the way I acted. I was just annoyed and trying to have a good time, and I took it too far." I nodded slowly. "Okay." She waited for more, but I wasn't going to make it easy. Natalie sat on the chair across from the bed, fiddling with her bracelet. "I wasn't trying to hurt you, Greg. I was just frustrated. We've both been kind of off lately, and I guess I took it out on you." "That's not an apology," I said. "That's an excuse." She flinched, just slightly. "All right, fine. I'm sorry I flirted. I shouldn't have done that. I was being careless." "Not careless," I said. "Disrespectful. You knew I was right there." She looked down. "I didn't mean to make you feel like you didn't matter, but I did feel that way," I said, my voice quiet. "And this isn't the first time." Her eyes flashed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I exhaled. "It means every time we're around other people, I become background noise. You cut me off, roll your eyes, make jokes about me being overly serious. Like I'm some dumb husband prop to entertain your friends." Natalie shook her head, annoyed. "I'm not trying to make you feel small. But you do," I said, over and over. She stood up, clearly agitated now. "Okay, well maybe if you weren't so sensitive." "There it is," I cut in. "Every time I bring something real to you, you call it sensitive or dramatic. You ever think the problem isn't that I feel too much? It's that you feel too little?" She looked like she'd just been slapped. Her mouth opened, but I kept going. "You don't take ownership, Natalie. You deflect, spin it around, make it about my tone or my timing or my mood. But never once have you looked me in the eye and said, 'I was wrong.'" She was quiet for a while. Then, in a clipped voice, she said, "Maybe I was too friendly. But you're blowing this out of proportion." There it was. Not an apology. Not really. Just a breadcrumb of responsibility, laced with condescension. I sat back against the headboard, feeling that familiar wave of disappointment roll in. She sighed and walked toward the door. "I'm trying here, Greg. I really am." I didn't stop her, because in that moment, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. She wasn't trying to fix us. She was just trying to get back to normal, her version of normal, where she could say whatever she wanted and I'd eventually fold. But this time, I wasn't folding. The next morning, I didn't say a word. I got up, showered, dressed for work, and left the house before Natalie came downstairs. No note. No breakfast conversation. Just silence. That silence didn't stop when I came home either. She was already there, sitting on the couch in her usual spot, scrolling through her tablet like everything was fine. I walked in, set my keys on the table, and went to the kitchen without even glancing her way. "You're really going to do this?" she called after me. "Just ignore me until I say exactly what you want to hear." I didn't answer. She followed me into the kitchen. "Greg, come on. This is childish." "What?" I admit I was too friendly, and now suddenly I'm the villain. Still nothing. She leaned against the fridge with her arms folded. "Okay, seriously? You're not going to talk to me at all?" I turned, looked her right in the eye, and said calmly, "I'm done explaining how to treat me." Then I walked past her and went to the bedroom. That night, I slept with my back to her. The air between us was heavy, full of words that neither of us would say. By the next day, she had shifted tactics again, trying to fill the silence with small talk. "How was work? You want to order Thai tonight? I saw your favorite hoodie in the laundry. You want me to hang dry it?" But I didn't give her what she wanted. No anger, no emotion, just space. Because I finally understood that silence wasn't always surrender. Sometimes, it was the only way to be heard. Then, later that evening, I overheard her in the guest room, the one she used for phone calls she didn't want me to hear. I passed by the door just in time to catch her voice. "No, he's being ridiculous. Like I flirted, so what? It was harmless." Pause. "Yes, Dad, I know. But he actually left the barbecue. Like stormed off. Everyone was asking about it." Another pause. "No, I'm not apologizing again. He's acting like I cheated or something. He needs to get over it." I stopped walking. Just stood there in the hallway, listening to her twist the story to her dad like I was some fragile idiot who couldn't handle a harmless joke. Then it hit me. This was who she really was when no one was watching. Later that weekend, her sister came over. I stayed in the garage, pretending to fix something on the workbench, but I could hear them through the open door to the kitchen. "He left the party like a baby," Natalie said. "Now he won't even talk to me. It's so dramatic." "Men are so emotional," her sister replied, laughing. "Dad said he's overreacting too." That was the last piece I needed. I realized then that it wasn't just Natalie. It was her whole family. People who believed they were always right. People who laughed at disrespect and called it normal. People who saw me as a problem the moment I set a boundary. And in that moment, I knew. I couldn't stay married to someone who learned how to mock before she ever learned how to listen. It was Sunday afternoon when Dave called. Natalie's brother-in-law. We weren't exactly close. He was the type who wore golf polos to everything and used words like brother man, without irony. But we'd shared enough beers at family gatherings to keep things civil. "Hey Greg," he said, too cheerful. "Got a minute?" I already knew where this was going. "Sure," I said flat. "So, Natalie's been a little out of sorts," he began. "She told us there was a disagreement?" I didn't respond. Dave chuckled awkwardly. "Anyway, I was thinking maybe we could grab a beer this week. Just talk it out. Man to man." I leaned back in my chair. "Talk about what exactly?" He paused, probably realizing I wasn't going to make this easy. "I just think maybe things got blown out of proportion. You know how Nat gets when she's stressed." "Dave," I said calmly, "why are you calling me?" Another pause. "She asked me to." "Of course she did. She figured you might be more open to hearing it from someone less emotionally involved." "Right. Because I was the emotional one in all this." "Let me ask you something," I said. "Do you think it's normal to flirt with someone else in front of your spouse and then tell them to leave if they don't like it?" Dave hesitated. "I mean, Natalie's always been friendly. It's just her personality. She doesn't mean anything by it." "So being friendly means treating your husband like an afterthought? Ignoring him in public? Making him feel like an intruder in his own relationship?" He tried to laugh it off. "Greg, come on. You know how she is. She's just got that outgoing vibe." "No," I said. "She's got a disrespectful vibe. And you calling me to defend it makes you part of the problem." Silence. Then Dave said, quieter this time, "She's hurting, man. So am I." I hung up. 15 minutes later, the next call came in, Natalie's dad. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Greg, he said. His voice was already loaded with judgment. This has gone on long enough. I don't know what kind of stunt you're trying to pull, but ignoring my daughter isn't the way to fix your marriage. Did she tell you what happened? She said you walked out on her, that you embarrassed her in front of her coworkers. I laughed bitterly. Did she also tell you she told me to walk out? That she flirted with another man and treated me like I wasn't even there? She said you were jealous, he snapped. Overreacting. Making a scene. Let me be clear, I said, steady as ever. This isn't about jealousy. It's about respect. And your daughter hasn't shown me an ounce of it. You think you're the victim here? He barked. You should be grateful you're married to someone like her. You're not exactly a prize, Greg. I stood up from my desk and walked to the window, the phone still to my ear. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the summer breeze. Everything was calm. Everything made sense. No, I said. I'm not the problem. He let out a sharp breath. You don't walk away from your wife over something this petty. She didn't just push me away, I said. She recruited you to back her up. That's not a marriage. That's a campaign. He said something else. I don't even remember what, but I'd already tuned him out. Because in that moment, I finally understood. I wasn't just fighting Natalie anymore. I was fighting the entire system that told her she could treat me like crap and still expect applause. And I was done fighting for a seat at that table. Natalie came home Tuesday night with a manila folder in her hand and determination all over her face. She dropped the folder on the dining table like it was some kind of peace offering or a bomb. I stayed on the couch, arms crossed, remote untouched in my lap. She took a breath and spoke like she'd rehearsed it. I talked to someone, she said. A counselor. I made us an appointment. I stared at her. For what? For therapy, she said, like it should be obvious. We need to talk to someone, Greg. A third party. Someone who can help us work through this. I didn't answer. Just leaned back, eyes on her, waiting. She stepped forward, voice softening. I know things have been off. I know I hurt you. But I don't want to throw this away. We've been together for almost 7 years. I think that's worth fighting for. I looked down at the folder, then back at her. What exactly do you think therapy's going to fix? She blinked. Our communication. Our tension. I don't know. Everything. I shook my head. No. You're hoping it'll reset things. Get us back to normal. But I'm not interested in going back. Her expression twisted. So what, Greg? You're done? Just like that? No, I said. But I'm done pretending this is about communication. This is about how you treat me. It's about respect, or the total lack of it. I said I was sorry. You said you were sorry it made me upset. I corrected. You haven't once said you were wrong. She dropped into a chair and rubbed her temples. I don't know what you want from me. I want you to admit what you did, I said. Not just that you were too friendly, or that I misunderstood. I want you to own it. Natalie looked up slowly. Fine. I flirted. It was stupid, but it wasn't cheating. I didn't touch him. I didn't leave with him. It's not about touching, I said. It's about the way you shoved me out of the picture. The way you humiliated me in front of a crowd, then told me to leave like I was embarrassing you. I was drunk, she muttered. No, I replied. You were honest. We sat in silence for a while. She opened the folder, pulled out a sheet of paper. These are the counseling intake forms. I already filled out mine. I stood up and walked over to the table. I didn't touch the paper. You keep thinking I want to fix the cracks, I said quietly. But you don't even see the foundations rotted. Her mouth tightened. So what now? You give up? No, I said. I give you a choice. I reached into my pocket and slid a folded note across the table. She opened it slowly. It was handwritten, simple, clear. Acknowledge the damage, or accept the end. She looked up at me, her mouth parting like she wanted to protest, but I saw it. That flicker in her eyes. Not fear, not grief, control slipping. And in that moment, I knew what her answer was going to be, even if she hadn't said it yet. Because Natalie never apologized. She negotiated. I packed a bag the next morning. Not with drama, not in a rush. Just a small duffel with some clothes, my toothbrush, a charger, and a few books I'd been meaning to read for years but never had the headspace for. When I stepped into the hallway, Natalie was already in the kitchen, acting like it was a regular Thursday, cereal bowl in front of her, phone in hand, hair pulled back neatly. She didn't look up. I'm going to stay at Matt's for a few days, I said, adjusting the strap on my shoulder. Her spoon clinked against the bowl. You're really doing this? I told you last night, I said. You had a choice. She finally looked at me, eyes narrowed. I'm not going to throw myself on the floor just because you're feeling dramatic. If you need to go sulk at your brother's, be my guest. I nodded, not surprised. I figured. And I walked out. Matt lived about 20 minutes away. He's my older brother, the calm one, the guy who never raises his voice but always sees straight through the noise. When I showed up at his door, he didn't ask for details. Just nodded once and opened the spare room. You're not the first one to crash here, he said, flipping on the light. And you probably won't be the last. I stayed there 4 nights. Natalie called on the first day, then again the second. I didn't answer either time. By the third, the messages started pouring in. Natalie, we need to talk. You're blowing this up for no reason. I don't even know who you are anymore. You're running away. That's what cowards do. I read each one. Deleted them all. Matt knocked on the door Sunday morning while I was sipping coffee at the kitchen counter. She's called here, he said, handing me his phone. Twice. Voicemails. I scrolled through. She sounded different this time. Softer. Less angry. More desperate. Please, Greg. Just come home. Let's talk. You can't really want to end this. But I could. And I did. We met on neutral ground the next afternoon, a quiet park off 79th Street, one we used to walk through in better years, when we still thought we were building something real. She sat on a bench when I arrived, face tight, jaw set. You've made your point, she said without preamble. I'm not here to make a point. Then what is this? She asked. Punishment. You want me to beg? I shook my head. I wanted you to understand that there's a line, and you crossed it a long time ago. She rolled her eyes. I flirted with a guy. It was dumb. But people survive worse things in marriages. You're right, I said. But they survive it by owning it. By changing. And you don't think I can change? I paused. No. I think you want me to adapt to your version of change. The kind where I pretend everything's fine so you don't have to feel uncomfortable. Her eyes flashed. So this is really it? You're walking away from 7 years? I'm walking away from being disrespected for 7 years, I said quietly. There's a difference. She stared at me, searching for a crack, a weakness, anything she could pry open. But there wasn't one. We signed the divorce papers 2 weeks later. Clean split. No kids. No shared property beyond the house, which I let her keep. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted out with my dignity intact. And when I walked out of that courthouse and into the parking lot, something in my chest felt loose, unknotted. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally let it go. I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. And it felt damn good. It was about 3 weeks after the papers were signed when Natalie texted again. Natalie, you didn't even try to fix it. You just walked away like it meant nothing. You abandoned me. You're the reason this marriage failed. I stared at the messages for a while, letting them sit there like wet laundry you forget in the machine. They had the same rhythm as all her past apologies, which weren't really apologies at all. Just blame in disguise. Guilt wrapped in nostalgia. This time, I didn't feel the pull. I didn't feel like defending myself. I didn't feel like proving anything. I just felt gone. Not angry. Not bitter. Just detached. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. It had been quiet since the divorce, a different kind of quiet from the one in our house. This one didn't hang heavy in the air. It didn't throb like a bruise. This silence was clean. At Matt's, I'd started sleeping through the night again. I woke up without a pit in my stomach. I started running in the mornings, something I hadn't done since our 2nd year of marriage. Just 3 miles. Slow. Steady. But enough to remind myself I was still here. I picked up weekend shifts at the rec center, helping coach a local teen robotics team. I'd always meant to volunteer, but Natalie hated when I gave away my time. Said it was exhausting to be married to someone who always wanted to fix things that weren't his responsibility. The irony of that didn't hit me until much later. One evening, I ran into an old coworker at the grocery store. He asked how Natalie was. I just smiled and said, "We're on different paths now." He nodded. Didn't push. Maybe he already knew. I realized then that I didn't have to tell the whole story anymore. I didn't have to explain the manipulation or justify my leaving. I didn't know anyone the details. The truth was mine now, and that was enough. A few days later, I got one more text from Natalie. Just one line. Natalie, I hope someday you realize what you lost. I reread it once. Then I locked my phone, slid it into my pocket, and walked out into the late afternoon sun. It was warm, golden, quiet. I realized something in that moment. I hadn't lost anything. I'd finally stopped trying to hold together a version of love that never loved me back. I'd stopped carrying the weight of someone else's denial. And I was free. Not starting over. Just starting true.